Do you ever wonder what stood between you and being successful? I do all the time. And I'll be honest with you, most of the time I don't care for the answer. It's as simple as walking out of my office into the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror, and realizing it's how I think and then ultimately what I do with those thoughts when I put them into action. But I'd like to share a story with you this morning. It's about somebody called Jerry. And I met Jerry about 20 years ago this month. He was waiting tables in a hotel restaurant. I used to stay at that hotel when I traveled, and after a long, hard day of work, it was just convenient for me to eat in the restaurant. So we got to know one another. And Jerry had a dream. He had a dream of owning his own restaurant, and not just any restaurant. He wanted to own a small, cozy, comfortable place that served a kind of home style Hispanic and Italian cuisine. Problem was is that Jerry had been married to a rather successful producer in the music industry. And one night while they were watching TV, she sat forward in her recliner and said, I don't think I want to be married anymore. Promptly got up and left. Jerry was left with a lot of bills, a lot of obstacles to overcome. And so he started waiting tables during the evening as well as working a full-time job during the day. About a month after waiting tables, he was hooked on the industry. And he had a number of mountains to climb, a number of obstacles that stood between him and his success. And he and I would talk, and I would encourage him. And you have to remember something, in 1995, email was just becoming the preferred way to communicate. So it might be 2, 3, 4 weeks before I'd even talk to him again. Well, one night I walked into the restaurant and he saw me and his face lit up, and he came over to my table and he said, I'm so glad you stopped by. He said, tomorrow's my last night here. I said, oh. And he said, yeah, I got a job at a restaurant that's actually going to make me go to school to learn the things I need to service my customers better. It's a little higher end than where I'm working right now, but I'm going to learn the difference between how to combine different dishes, what type of wine and beverage to serve with certain dishes, how to handle customer complaints, all those kind of things. It's going to prepare me for management. So I quickly scrawled on a napkin my name and address and told him to please keep in touch. About a year later, he told me he'd gone to work for another restaurant where they had hired him to be the assistant maitre d'. About 2 years later, I got one of those fancy "you're invited" cards in the mail. And it invited me to the opening of his first restaurant. Now, while Jerry was getting involved in the food industry and trying to remove some of those obstacles to his success, he had also gotten involved in the arts. And one of the things he opened his restaurant up to was local artists being allowed to hang their paintings on the wall and sell them. I'm going to fast forward because I lost touch with Jerry about 7 or 8 years ago. But the last I heard from him, he owned 3 small manageable restaurants and was on about 2 or 3 communities, board of directors, art museums. When we last talked, he was happier than I'd ever heard him. And I asked him, I said, if you went back to that very first night we met, and that very first night you told me the things that stood in your path, do you ever think you'd be where you are today? And he said, no, honestly, John, I didn't. I said, so could you give me your secret to success? He said, I changed my thinking. I changed my thinking from saying there's obstacles in my way to there's challenges I need to overcome to get where I want to go. So here's my challenge to you today. What's standing in your way for you meeting to your success? And how can you help overcome it, remove it, or work with it? If you look at my lower third this morning, just remember, The sun is always shining somewhere, especially inside of me and you. Hope you have a great week.